International trade is one of the most consequential and controversial aspects of macroeconomics in the 21st century. Entry of China into the World Trade Organization, or WTO, in 2001 changed the face of the world debate around it for the next 2 decades. They may have changed, focusing more so on China or Mexico and even the EU than on Japan or India. But whether we're talking about Chinese pork purchases from the US or the 1906 big trade war, the tools, arguments, and sticking points have never really changed. Detractors of free trade usually resurge after recession, often arguing that trade takes away job opportunities for domestic workers, puts downward pressure on wages at home, and creates dependencies upon other nations for essential goods and services. They advocate for restricting trade using tariffs, which are taxes imposed upon imported goods and services, and quotas, which are ceiling limits on how much of a good or service can be imported from specific nations. Advocates of free trade, though, make the argument that nations have comparative advantages. Those advantages allow for some goods to be produced at the lowest opportunity cost globally. If nations focus their factors of production on making those goods, then trade with each other, we can all consume more goods at lower costs. Advocates go on to point out that real wages aren't determined by the factors influenced by trade, but by the demand for and supply of labor in the economy. The argument is compelling and has been the driving force for trade liberalization efforts for decades. But economists have only recently come to terms that the ideal they were selling was plentiful and optimism, but lacking in sober timeline expectations. You see, economists admitted that yes, in the short run, free trade would make economies more efficient by focusing factors of production, including labor, on their comparative advantages. But that would mean pre-existing industries that made other goods and services would be neglected, and the people trained and employed in those industries would be left out of the new economy. Economists used to more often write off those concerns as short-lived. Most models of international trade concluded that free trade was a net job creator in the long run, and those who lost jobs in inefficient industries would just get new ones in efficient ones. The problem with that argument, though, is that it ignores the social side of socioeconomics. In countries with aging populations, where retirement security isn't as strong and inequality in treatment and opportunity exists, there is no new job. In the US, this has become very clear as older workers, especially people of color and those with low educational attainment or living in rural areas, face the reality of America moving away from a manufacturing to a service-based economy, centered in urban areas and employing mostly college graduates. We'll get more into the challenges those workers face when we discuss unemployment, but the demographic groups that were the backbone of traditional American manufacturing were hardly prepared for the new jobs in services and automated manufacturing. And the federal government's retraining and trade adjustment assistance programs are notoriously ineffective and underfunded. Even if in the long run, new job opportunities will arise, many are still wondering how long that will take for their community and whether it will ever happen. Yes, free trade seems to be a net benefit for most economies. Even for the US, our exports are nearly equivalent to federal revenue collections as a percentage of GDP, benefit tremendously from access to the global market. But because the benefits haven't been equally distributed, our democratic republic is experiencing a backlash against neoliberal trade and, by association, immigration policies. Its latest manifestation has been in the form of President Donald Trump's election, which has put a real strain on our institutions of checks and balances. But if history is any guide, without serious considerations regarding the impacts on the micro and socioeconomic levels, this won't be the last time we'll be debating the merits of free trade.